Dane and Derek is an uncensored, unfiltered podcast. You can find content warnings in the episode description. Thank you for listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dane and Derek, and this week we are back talking about Dungeons and Dragons. My name is Derek. I'm a writer, director, and all the times D&D player. And I'm here with Dane.
Yep. Hello. I am still me. I'm still Dane. Tonight is the night of us recording. Not far out from my finals, so these episodes are abridged. The audio quality on my end is not going to be great. You can probably hear footsteps above me at this second. And that is indicative of my mental state right now. But I am...
God.
Oh, yes. We didn't do this last year.
Nope.
Last year we spread it out better. That's okay. Because I am happy to be here with you. And happy to be singing the praises of the fighter class.
Yeah.
In D&D. So I'm going to say a quick thing about the fighter, and then I'm mostly going to toss it to you, because you are a big fighter player, which I am not.
Yeah.
So the fighter, for those of you who may not know, is more or less one of the OG starting classes. Like, it's more or less been with the game since its inception. I think it used to be called like the Fighting Man or something, very silly like that. But all of the other classes you think of coming that are like really quite beloved, Barbarian, Paladin, and Ranger at the very least. I believe Monk might also be, were originally sort of more subclasses for fighter than anything else. And so fighter is considered pretty basic in terms of classes. It's considered sort of like the newbie class. And for, I think a lot of experienced and longtime players consider it very boring. That's part of the reason I want to kind of sing its praises. It does have the sort of, I would say dubious in terms of value recognition, and like 5e is probably being the potential for the highest damage dealing class in the game. So that aside, it does not get the love I think it deserves. But Derek, you defy all these things I'm talking about. You are a lover of fighters. You are a fighting man.
Yeah.
But you're also a longtime player. Like the game, that part of the game does not bore you.
Yeah.
So yeah, talk about your love of fighters.
So I'll put it this way. There are three things I think about when I think about fighters. It is that the first class I ever played in D&D was a fighter. The fact that fighter is perhaps a lot of people would call it a basic class, like you had mentioned. But sometimes having simplicity and not having to think about the rules or look at the book so much is nice, and that's a big reason why I enjoy playing fighters. And then the last thing is that most of the campaigns that I've actually finished and most of the characters that I actually really remember as like being beloved were not fighters.
That's kind of true, isn't it?
Yeah, I have had a lot of rangers, I've had a ranger, a wizard. It's perhaps my two most beloved characters. Not a fighter yet. So yeah, I think for me playing the fighter, it's usually a class that I don't know, like everyone always talks about how like the cleric is the class that nobody wants to play.
Yeah.
But I found that to not be true with 5th edition.
Cleric's good in 5th edition.
Yeah, everyone wants to be a caster in 5th edition. And I think like with like not Adventure Time, Adventure Zone, and like Critical Role, clerics are like really cool. Now they're not just like a priest character that heals you. You know, they're more than that, right? Like Thor is a type of cleric in a way.
Yeah. Like if you want to be a lightning caster in 5e, do not look to the sorcerer or the wizard or the warlock. You need to go play a Tempest cleric without a doubt.
Yeah, and so I think like what ends up being the situation is when I roll up to play D&D, everyone else is a caster.
Mm-hmm.
There's usually a cleric, a wizard, a sorcerer, and a warlock in the party, and so I guess I'll play the fighter. I've only had one fighter as of recent who was perhaps my a beloved character of mine. Now that I think about it, and that was a similar situation where I think we had like there were 9 people in the party, and I think 7 or 6 of them were casters. And everybody else eventually multi-classed away from their like stock martial class. And I think that is, I think, a testament to how powerful casters are, and just sort of like tactical nature of the game that people enjoy. But I think what I love about the fighter is just it's simple to get into the game with. You can withstand a lot of damage. You can kick ass, and that you can. You have access to a lot of things. Fighters get extra feats. They get all access to all the weapons early on. Not that really matters, but it kind of does. And then on top of that, it's sort of a nice like blank class that you can kind of multi-class out of, or like if you pick a non-champion fighter, you can really have some interesting customization there.
Totally.
And then I think the other thing is like I think if I was more into the idea of like the paladin and like the oaths and the like religious aspects of the paladin character, I would play paladins more. But because that's kind of difficult, and sometimes you can play with a DM that's like very, very like rules lawyery about that stuff, and then like you lose all your powers at first level or something.
Yep.
I think the fighter ends up being a safe bet for me in order to play a character that can kind of do a little bit of everything, but still be tough. And yeah, I think I just really enjoy it, and I think perhaps it comes from like when I play D&D, like the power fantasy I want is to be a cool character with a big sword that can like protect everybody, and like because perhaps in real life I akin myself more to like, I think if I were to be in the world of D&D, I wouldn't necessarily be a fighter. I'd probably be like a wizard or a bard or something, like I wouldn't be a fighter. And I think that's perhaps like truly where I feel it's more of a fantasy experience for me, by playing a character that is like that, who's 8 feet tall with a 2-handed sword, dual wielding two-handed swords. Like, I don't know. It's interesting to me. Funny enough, my first D&D character and my most recent D&D character, both fighters, both dragon adjacent characters, as in like half dragon or dragonborn, both made it past level 10. And yeah, both used 2-handed swords.
Isn't that the way?
Isn't that the way?
Isn't that the way?
Yeah, but I think about like how the fighter just is a really resilient class, especially early on in levels 1 through 3.
It is. And as I was kind of like thinking about while you were mentioning like memorable characters and whatnot, and how they weren't a lot of fighters, I was thinking about like, what are my memorable characters? I spend way more time being the game master than the player, so they're fewer and further between. And people know me. I tend to baseline towards a caster, usually wizard or warlock, if we're being honest. However, I was thinking about it and I was like, a lot of the characters I've really loved in like recent years playing, the long and short of it is they've all been in not D&D. They've either been in Dungeon World or the Dragon Age tabletop game. Um,
Mm.
and in every single instance, I played a big person with a fighting weapon of some kind. Uh, Straight up the warrior in Dragon Age. A very like Herculean style fighter thing for
Hmm.
Dungeon World, um and a more witchery style fighting person and a paladin. So everybody's just I've got a sword has been basically been the vibe, or I've got a big axe. And I've loved those, and I was like, why do I always like that? And I always find myself having a lot of room with that, and I think it has a lot to do with what you're talking about. With casters, there is this huge chunk of your brain that's sort of stuck casting. It's one of the reasons I actually really like Warlock is secretly a magic fighter. Um uh and but yeah, sorry. Eldritch Blast slash Hexblade is probably what Eldritch Knight should have been. Anyways, I digress.
Yes,
The
yes.
long and short of it is, you're right. When you're casting like full caster, full on wizard, you are a huge chunk of your mental load is going towards that part of the game. It's a huge another set of mechanics. And that's why it's really fun. And I
Hmm.
think it's why I often lean towards it, especially in games that I'm suspicious or based on the odds probably won't go that far. And so like there's not going to be a ton of time to get super goddamn invested in the character. And so I'm like, well, I'd like to have a fun time at the table. And so I'd like to play with all the tools at the table. Thank you. Since that's where I think the most of this joy is going to be.
Mm.
And so some ways I actually treat it more like a game of Magic the Gathering, or like a more like a war game, or a tabletop game. Um, Anyways, there's the magic of like a more martial character with a lot more simplicity is, like you said, it's a big blank canvas, you know. Um, like big guy with sword is so many things. That's so many characters.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Because I think like I feel like when you are such a blank canvas, you can kind of fit the role of whatever the party needs. Like if you need to be the comic relief or the strategist or the shield, right? The big guy. Um,
yeah, yeah.
like you can kind of fulfill any role. Whereas like I find it hard when I roll up and I'm like, yeah, I'm a wizard, but like I'm the wizard that failed out of wizard school, so I'm like really bad at magic. Like people aren't very forgiving to that type of character usually, I found,
No,
but they're
but
much
they're
more forgiving of like a highly intelligent fighter or a fighter that's not so intelligent and isn't a strategist, right? Like
yep.
the fighter can be so many more things character-wise than perhaps some of the other classes.
Yeah, I think the one thing to love about it is that mechanically your fighter's going to be pretty good.
Hmm.
Don't play the banneret, otherwise you're going to have a good fighter. Um, and so you don't have to worry about the mechanics. You play a fighter, you're gonna be fine in the game part of the game, and then you can move on to just playing your character and thinking up what kind of vibe you want to be, and you can be ranged, you can have a little bit of magic, you can do like pure champion nonsense, right? You can do all of it. Whereas even some of the other martial classes require like kind of box you in at least a little, right? If
Yeah.
you're gonna play a rogue, well, you gotta be the person who's willing to take the cheap shot.
Hmm.
No matter what, even if you're like a really good person, you still gotta be willing to be like, yeah, but in a fight, I'm still gonna throw sand in your face and stab you.
Yeah.
Like you have to be that person. If you're a barbarian, even the most like peaceful, like against the grain barbarians out there I've ever played with, yeah, man, you still gotta rage somehow,
Yeah.
right? Like you gotta get like worked up. It can be like passion or all of these things. I've seen it done 1,000 ways, but like you still gotta do that. Like fighter can be the raging warrior, or they can be the like cool as like ice samurai, right? Like they're just
Yeah.
everything. And so like you're not focused there. And I think that's often really cool. And I think that's why there's a lot of it's it's why I'm often very impressed by like the wizard player who then comes in and is like And now I'm also this wonderful character. I find often that my casters get lost amongst their class.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
Recently, my fiance Gracie pulled it off with a wizard, like a straight up divination wizard. So impressed with her. Love that character. Interestingly, that character wound up with a party member, like in a romantic sense, with a fighter. Um, and that fighter ended up getting to be the heart of that party, though,
Mm,
because, you know, their player, all they had to do was play the character. And then in combat, then they did the thing. So I think that's like super cool and super underrated. Um, except for people who are like hyper min maxers who are like, all right, here's what you got to do. You got to play fighter and you got to take crossbow expert and sharpshooter and you're going to dual wield like, you know, like that person, right? Like,
yeah.
and it's like, oh my God, please calm down a little. Um, just a little. Um, and so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a lot more to it than is on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But I think this one of the things that's really hard about it is that for people who need a little something to work with, fighter can be really tough because it doesn't give you a lot to work with either.
Yeah.
That's just straight out of the box. That is,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. I think like, and I think that's the thing, right? Like fighter, it's difficult because, unless you want to get into like battle master stuff or like pull in some like eldritch knight or some other subclass, you know, champion is probably what you're probably going to take, or there just isn't there. Its growth really fizzles out very quickly. Like
Hmm.
past level 8, like it starts to become the same thing. Um,
Yeah.
and like,
So,
yeah.
oh,
Hmm.
as we're kind of winding down here, because we got to keep these episodes short because I'm losing my mind. I do wanna add. I think one thing that is true about the fighter is, unlike, say, the wizard at high levels, the fighter doesn't feel that awesome anymore.
Yeah.
Especially in D&D proper. And I think the reason behind that is, at high levels, wizards are like, I cast fucking wish and now the world's different. And the fighter's like, I attack 3 times in a turn. Like that's
Yeah.
like they're,
Yeah.
they're just not the same. Casters get to a point where they start like fucking with reality, and it's, to use like a Marvel reference, it's like Doctor Strange and Captain America. Captain
Yeah.
America is like the best fighter that's ever been, but
But
still like you could shoot him with a gun enough times and he'd die. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
right. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
as opposed to like Doctor Strange, who's like, we're going dimension hopping and I'm going to make a bunch of illusions and I'm going to warp everything. You won't know where I am, and I'm an illusion. I'm also a zombie with 7 arms, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's different. It's just a different vibe entirely. Um, and you were talking about how at your tables you're running into a lot of people who want to play casters. I want to play caster. I want to play caster. I'm finding at my table, I'm hearing a lot of people being like, I don't want to play caster. Um,
Hmm.
like I have a lot of people who are not interested in doing that. Um, However, at my table, for this foreseeable future, in 5e, I level cap at 8. Interestingly,
Huh.
makes a different vibe for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, fighters are still like up until like in this most recent game I played, and up until we were even beyond like level 9, my character was still like the most powerful character, like physically in the game.
Hmm.
Um, like unless like someone like wizarded something away, like there was a good chance I could fight and kill it.
Yep.
Um, and we would do this like sparring match stuff, and like my character would pummeled a bunch of the other players, and I think it was like an example of like the fighter has its place. And I think like the fighter evokes a sense of adventure that I think like if like if the campaign is not built to evoke that similar sense of adventure, it can be um
underwhelming.
Yeah, it can be underwhelming.
And I think unlike cleric and wizard, who have changed with the times, I think fighter and to maybe even a greater extent the rogue sometimes to me feel like relics of a bygone age of D&D specifically.
Yeah.
From an era in which level 1 wizards got a spell.
Mm-hmm.
You know? An era of such lower power. And I think that's a version of the game worth exploring, but it's not the version of the game most people play anymore. Though I would personally recommend level capping at 8. It feels fucking great. Just saying. Anyways, we gotta wrap.
Yeah. Well, folks, yeah, maybe one of these days we'll have more thoughts on other classes. I think the last time we did this, we talked about the wizard, and
we did.
Maybe next time we'll talk about the rogue or the cleric.
I think we should talk about the rogue or the cleric next. We should hit the OG4.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we should.
And I just want to say, interestingly, you and I basically have never gotten to play D&D as players together, except for one time in my memory, really.
Yes, one time. It's only been once.
You played a wizard, I played a fighter. I fucking have such good memories of that game.
Yeah, and it's funny. My wizard character dual classed with rogue.
And was super weird.
Yeah,
super weird. I played straight fighter. I think I played champion fighter. Even.
Yes, I think you did too.
Yeah.
And I remember it was funny. Like that was and then Will was a cleric. So it was a real OG game.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Super good. Super good.
Okay. Well, folks, as usual, you can follow the show everywhere at Dane and Derek. We don't really tweet or Instagram, really, but...
We don't tweet anymore anyways. We can't do it. We X now.
Yeah, we X, yeah. But if you have thoughts, you can leave us a comment on YouTube or Instagram us, and we'll take a look eventually. Oh, God, it's been ages since I've logged in and checked our social media.
I don't think I've ever done it. I only follow.
Man, if you want, Dane, you could respond to all the fan mail. Not that we get any fan mail, which I don't even know where you'd mail it to. Anyway, point being, you can follow the show everywhere. Thank you for listening. I am Derek, one of the co-hosts. You can find my work on my website, benigfilms.com. And Dane, where can we find you on the internet?
I have a website, danewrites.com. It's super out of date, but it's there. I'm also, I guess, on Instagram. That's also pretty out of date, but it's there. I'm Dane. I am a co-host, ostensibly, but really, I'm just a collection of law knowledge bound together in my mortal coil skin suit by stress.
Oh, so, goodness.
Here we are.
Here we are. Cool, everybody. We'll see you next week. We got, I think, 4 more of these to go. Or 3 more. 3 more to go. No, 3 more to go.
I'm going to be living like here's what's going to happen, folks. I'm going to be this insane for the next 2 episodes after this. And then we'll see if I'm still alive in the last one, or if Derek played a cleric or a wizard and is using Speak with Dead to talk to me. We'll find out. We'll find out. All right. Yeah. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye. Out here on the sand, not far from land. Sure, I'm warm, but I wish I was cold with you. Out here on the sand, not far from land. Sure, I'm warm, but I wish I was cold.